Yours missing number 9.
No, the number page before, it goes 6, and then the number on 7 and 8 is tore out where the number is.
Oh.
And so when you close the book, it looks like it's number 9.
Okay. Number 9. Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the morning bright and fair? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the heat of the noonday's glare? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reaper's work will soon be done. Will your sheaves be many? Will you garner any for the gathering at the harvest home? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the still and solemn night? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, for a harvest pure and white? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reaper's work will soon be done. Will your sheaves be many? Will you garner any for the gathering at the harvest home? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, all along the fertile way? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, you must reap at the last great day? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reaper's work will soon be done. Will your sheaves be many? Will you garner any for the gathering at the harvest home? Number 262. Number 262. Work, for the night is coming. Work through the morning hours. Work while the dew is sparkling. Work mid springing flowers. Work when the day grows brighter. Work in the glowing sun. Work, for the night is coming, when man's work is done. Work, for the night is coming. Work through the sunny noon. Fill brightest stars with labor. Rest comes sure and soon. Give every flying minute something to keep in store. Work, for the night is coming, when man works no more. Work, for the night is coming, under the sunset skies, while their bright tints are glowing. Work, for daylight flies. Work till the last beam fadeth, fadeth to shine no more. Work, for the night is darkening, when man's work is o'er. Number 279. Number 279. Why did my Savior come to earth and to the humble go? Why did he choose a lowly birth? Because he loved me so. He loved me so. He loved life for me, because he loved me so. Why did he drink the bitter cup of sorrow, pain, and woe? Why on the cross be lifted up? Because he loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave his precious life for me, because he loved me so. Till Jesus comes, I'll sing its praise, and then to glory go, and reign with him through endless days, because he loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave his precious life for me, because he loved me so.
The table has been left prepared for those who've not been able to partake of the Lord's Supper this morning. If you would, raise your hand and we'll serve you. Would you please pray with me? Dear Lord, our Father in heaven, again we thank you for the day that you've given us. But Father, we especially want to thank you as we have this opportunity to come before your Son's table. And now, Father, as we break this bread, let us be reminded, as he spoke to his disciples then, he speaks to us today, telling them to break this bread in remembrance of him. So let us do these things according to his will. For it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Again, would you pray with me? And now, Father, again, we come humbly before thy throne of grace, knowing that you have looked down upon us in mercy and grace through your Son. And Father, let us build our faith through the things that you have given us, knowing full well that just as your Son told his disciples that he will again drink this cup when he comes back, Father, let us be reminded of that hope that we have eternal. And again, let us remember him in that sacrifice, for it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Number 370 there, Song of Invitation, number 370. Okay, good.
We were in the book of Judges, studied the book of Judges, and we're on page 15 in your book. But I'd like to talk about some material I found. This is a real good writing about, we talked about it when we were talking about false doctrines in our study there for a while. We talked about false doctrines. And I was telling you about the 80-70 theory, or the Max King doctrine. And this is not something that's out there. This is in the church. This man was a gospel preacher. I don't know what you call him now, but he came up with this theory and he spread it around. And we were in Ardmore, the church on the north side, which was Maxwell Avenue. Their preacher, who I thought was a sound fella, their preacher carried off a bunch of the about half the congregation into this doctrine, AD 70 theory, and started their own church, built church over there, and taught this. And this Garland M. Robinson is a gospel preacher. I think last time I knew of him, he lived in Tennessee somewhere, but he wrote this article, which is really good, and I've got 4 copies, and if we need more than that, I can print some more, but I just thought, I didn't know who might be interested. But he goes across just goes over the basic, the tenets of Kingism, or the AD 70 theory. And I know this, at number 1, he teaches that the church was not established on Pentecost in AD 33, but it was established in AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed. That's when the church was. But the problem is, in AD 70, Peter was already dead. And I keep saying that because that's important. Why? Because Jesus said to Peter, what? I'm going to give you the keys. Well, if Peter's already dead, then there's a problem. There is a problem. But he says, well, he teaches, though, that the church was not established on the first Pentecost after the resurrection of Jesus, but it was established in AD 70 when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. And he also teaches that the final judgment, that is not a judgment, but the final judgment, the end of the world judgment, happened in AD 70. And guess what? We kind of missed it, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was the final judgment occurred in AD 70. And the resurrection of all the dead happened in AD 70 when they destroyed Jerusalem. The resurrection occurred. We missed that too. Let's see what else he teaches that the end of the world occurred in AD 70. Now I wonder, and people believe this now, and they do. This is not something they're doing in secret here. This is the tenets that they teach. How would you believe that? Well, the world ended in AD 70, and I'm going, what's this? What is this? What is this? If it's ended already, but that's the 4th thing they teach, and they also teach number 5 that the second coming of Christ occurred in AD 70. Jesus came. There was the final judgment. There was the final resurrection of the dead in AD 70. I mean, that leaves us out on every count, doesn't it? Every count, that leaves us out. We're out here. And then he has a little section back here. He talks about the real significance of the doctrine and, how it affects us. But here is, if you'd like a copy of this just to read, I've got 4, and we'll make some more if we need some more. But I will say this. In there, you will notice in the notes here that in his writing here, he notes that in 1973, Max King, who was this doctrine, who started this doctrine, Max King debated Gus Nichols over this issue. Gus Nichols, we remember him because he was a great old-time preacher, and he debated Max King in 1973 over this issue, and they produced it in a book, and I have that book on computer. If you'd like to read the book, I can get you a copy so you can read it on your computer. If you look on Amazon, I'm sure you can buy one for about $70. But I can give you a copy to read on your computer for free. I have that book, and I've been through it and made whatever corrections need to be made and so on. But I have it on the computer. So if you'd like to read the debate, but there's material you can read that gives you the gist of what's being taught. And if you think, well, that's old and they ain't going to affect us, there are young preachers coming up that suck that up and believe it and are teaching it and going with it. So we just have to be careful to know ourselves what it is, so we don't get caught up. And also we know what when we hear those kind of things coming out, we'll know this ain't right. We'll know what is the tenets of their doctrines. Well, we look here at the judges. Now, we looked first at Othniel, who was the nephew, I guess, the son of Caleb's brother. And he's the first judge, and he delivers them from Mesopotamian oppression. And then Ehud, delivered them from the Moabite oppression, and we read about that in chapter 3, and that's when I laugh about because I like that guy's name, Cushan-Rishathaim. I think, boy, what a name is that. Cushan-Rishathaim. But in chapter 3, and he delivers them from that oppression, and it's interesting how he did it because he happened to be left-handed, and that was not a common thing. So he hid his sword, a long dagger, in fact, and when they looked for where it normally would be, it wasn't there. He went in and got to Cushan-Rishathaim to send everybody out, and it notes there, if you read that he was so fat that when Ehud stuck him with that knife, that the rolls of fat closed over the knife and he couldn't withdraw it. He just had to draw his hand out and leave it in him. And then Ehud got up and left and told his guards at the door, he's taking a nap, don't bother him. and he went on, and of course, Cushan-Rishathaim died of the stab wound, and the knife was still left in him when Ehud left. And we noted there, if you note there, that then it talks about how after him was Shamgar, who slew a bunch of Philistines there in verse 31 of chapter 3. And it says he threw 600 with an ox goad. That's a pretty deadly fellow there. And between the two of them, and it doesn't say just one, but between the two of them, there were 80 years of peace. And the people followed God and more or less faithfully for 80 years. Now, how long, and the scripture doesn't really tell us how long after Ehud did Shamgar come. It could have been the next year, or it could have been 40 years later that Shamgar killed these 600 Philistines with an ox goad. We don't know. It doesn't say. And sometimes there's things that would be interesting to know. How soon after Ehud delivered them from Cushan-Rishathaim did Shamgar come along? How long was that afterward? But it doesn't mention that here. It's only one verse, and all we know about Shamgar is we find in that one verse. Shamgar was the son of Anath, and that's about it. That he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad and delivered Israel from oppression. As it appears that the Philistines were trying to make an inroad into Israel, and he said nope, nope. He sent them home, and he delivered them. But again, as we're looking at each one of these, we need to realize that these men were deliverers because God sent them. God appointed them. It wasn't that this just happened. They were appointed by God, and they are God's hand to deliver Israel from the oppression. And I think Ehud and Shamgar did good. That there was 80 years of peace there. Then there's the Canaanite oppression in chapter 4, 1 through 3. It doesn't say too much about it either. That it was that. But then we talk about Deborah the prophetess, who is the leader at this point. But notice in the children of Israel, again, there's a recurring problem here. They again did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead. Now, it doesn't say how long after Ehud was dead, but after he died, And the king sold them into the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in, boy, that's a Harosheth of the Gentiles. And so here, and the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. Now here's quite an army. He has quite an army besides foot soldiers, and it doesn't mention how many of those he has, but he had 900 chariots made of iron. That's quite an arsenal there that he had. And so then comes Deborah, the deliverer. And this is interesting how this occurs, because Deborah is not the one that was supposed to go. Deborah was the prophetess that God talked to, and God told her to call Barak to be the deliverer. I want you to call Barak. But again, we see how sometimes, in this case, the man who was supposed to go didn't want to go. He didn't want to stand up. He is reluctant to go. But he finally says to her, well, I'll go if you go with me. I thought, that's pretty sad, isn't it? I'm scared you have to come help. I need a woman to protect me. That's pretty sad. But notice, because of this, in verse 8, he says, Barak said to her, if thou wilt go with me, then I will go. And if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. Right? But God has already told him what? God has told through Deborah, who he knows is a prophetess, you, Barak, she calls him Barak, God says for you to go do this. Well, I ain't going unless you go with me. And because of that, we notice in verse 9, she said, I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor, for the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. Well, what she's saying is, you think, yeah, because of your reluctance to go, and you won't go unless I go with you, you're not going to win the battle. A woman is going to win this battle for God. And that's exactly what they do the battle, and we see that the battle goes bad. If you read that 4th chapter, the battle goes bad. And in verse 17, it notes that Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael. That's Jael is the woman, the wife of Heber. And so he runs away from the battle because it's not going good for him. Not going good for him. And you kind of think, well, why not? He had 900 chariots of iron, plus all of his other things. And do you think that Barak and Deborah had that? Well, no, they didn't have that. But we know that God was on their side, so there it is. So he flees away. The battle is turned against him, and he's lost his chariot somehow. So now he's running on his feet. He's running away, and he comes to the tent of Jael, that's the wife of Heber, the Kenite. Well, there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. So he thinks she's on his side, so he runs away, and he wants to hide in her tent. So he comes to her, and she puts him in the tent. And notice he says, verse 19, I pray thee a little water to drink. I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk and gave him to drink, and covered him, put a blanket over him. And again he said to her, stand at the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, thou shalt say, and shall say, is there any man here? Thou shalt say, no. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent. What she took is a tent stake, a big tent stake, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly into him, and smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it to the ground, for he was fast asleep, so he died. She drove a tent stake through his head and drove it into the ground. She's a pretty tough woman. This is not a woman you would want to be mad at you. Because you could, as a young man I grew up with, he ran away from his grandmother. He was living with his grandmother. His mother had left him, and his father had died, and his mother had left him, and his grandmother was raising him. And he was a pretty ornery kid. He ran away. She'd get after him, and he'd run away. Instead of taking his medicine, he'd run away. So one night he came in, he had run away again, and he came in, and she didn't say a word. She just fixed him his supper and was just as nice as could be. And he got late, so he went to bed. And she went over and she took the sheet that was over him and just spread it over the bed and lifted the corners of the bed and put the sheet under the leg of the bed on every corner. And then she got her a clothes hanger, wire clothes hanger, and straightened it out, and she ironed that sheet from head to toe. And then when she he couldn't get up because he was laying on the sheet. He couldn't get up. She just ironed that sheet real good, head to toe, back a while. And when she finally let him up, got him out from under there, she told him, "Now, Lyndon, you just remember, you can run away from Grandma all you want to, but you have to come home and sleep sometime." From then on, when she'd call him and say, "Lyndon," he'd say, "I gotta go." Before he would just kind of ignore her, but after that, when she said, "Lyndon," he'd hear her calling, he said, "I gotta go." I thought, wow. Well,
He learned fast.
he did learn fast. Well, Jael got his medicine, but he didn't learn much from it because he was into this. But in this, I want to note here that God chose, and as we're going to see as we look at this, that the deliverers began to lose the quality of the man that originally. Now, Othniel was a great warrior. He killed a lot of people. He helped them take Hebron away from the giants. He was a great warrior. But then we come, and Ehud was a great warrior, but it's note that he was left-handed. That kind of was a mark against him as far as some people thought. But now, Barak is called to be, and he's afraid. He's not going to go unless Deborah goes with him. And so the battle is given to the women. Actually, the leader should have been Barak, but who was the leader? Deborah was the leader. And when the battle was done and Sisera was defeated, it was done by a woman. So you see how this goes. And what happens is, I think the little message is, the more times you sin, the worse it gets, or something like that. It just gets worse and worse. And you're going to notice this as we go along. But then in chapter 5, here is the song of Deborah and Barak. It's interesting that the song, the first verse just simply introduces, said they're going to sing a song. And verse 2 through verse 31 is that song. Here's a song with 30 verses. Here's a song of 30 verses. I thought, well, howdy, song leaders, if we wanted to lead a song with 30 verses, what would happen? People would be dying when they but here is a song of 30 verses. The very first verse is just simply an introduction to the song, but then all the rest from 2 through 31 that is the song. And then we look at the Midianite oppression, and we're going to look at Gideon. Now, at the end, here's how this begins. And I thought the first time or two I read it, I thought, well, this is strange. And then I realized that Gideon was a coward. He wasn't a brave man. He was a brave man in the end. But at the beginning, he's a coward. When the angel comes to him, what's he doing? He's hiding. He's not standing up saying, "Look at me." He's hiding. And when God tells him to go, well, God has to do a lot of stuff to convince him to go. But he don't want to go. But it notes in chapter 6, verse 1, children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. So 7 years they're under Midianite oppression. And we see that when they had war, it says the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, because the Midianites, the children of Israel, because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them dens, in which were in the mountains and caves and strongholds. And so it was, when Israel had sown, that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them and encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth. So they just waited back until everybody planted their harvest, and it was harvest time, and guess what? Now we move in. Now we move in and we take the crops. We move in and we take their sheep. We take their oxen. We take everything. It's kind of like locusts. We just lay back until everything's right and then ripe, and we go in and take it. And it notes that how many of them was there? It says they came as grasshoppers for multitude. How what? They're like millions of them. Everywhere, lots of them. And he says, and their camels were without number, and they entered the land to destroy it. They were like the locust. And here they are. And verse 8 says, and the Lord sent a prophet to the children of Israel, which said unto them, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drave them out from before you, and gave you their land. And I said unto you, I am the Lord your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. I told you not to do it, and what did you do? You went and done it. That's exactly what you did. It sounded like children, and it tell them not to do something. What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to go do it. And there then it says, here's the beginning of the call of Gideon. And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak tree which was in Ophrah, that pertaineth unto Joash the Abizarite, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. So he's hiding out. He's not a real brave soul. He's a coward. He's hiding out. And I think it's interesting how the angel addresses him. Here's a guy hiding. He's hiding. And the angel says, oh, thou mighty man of valor. That's kind of sarcasm, isn't it? Yeah, oh, mighty man of valor. Here he's hiding out. Well, he's not a mighty man of valor now, but he will be. He will be once he is convinced by God to do what God says, and then realizes that God is going to do it. You know, if I'll do my part, God will do his. And so Gideon says to him in verse 13, "O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all of his miracles, which our fathers told us of, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us to the hands of the Midianites." It's kind of like some people cannot believe that something they did caused their problem. And in fact, they will say what? When they do something stupid and they're reaping the consequence of doing something stupid, it's your fault or your fault. It's somebody, it's not my fault. I seen a thing on Facebook, on one of the news channels, where this girl was crying. She's about 25 or so. Look, she graduated from college, had a big degree, and she had got this really good job. She said, it was a really good job. I've been working so hard to get this job when I graduated from college. And she posted on Facebook how that, in a video of herself, how that if it was up to her, she'd kill all the white people and watch them bleed out. And they fired her. She lost her job. And she's crying and she's saying, it's Trump's fault. I had this wonderful job, and it's Trump's fault I lost my job. It's all Trump's fault. And I said, wouldn't have nothing to do with you being stupid, would it? Right? But here's Gideon. Yeah, am I seeing the same thing? Yeah, human nature has not changed. When I'm in trouble, it's not my fault. Somebody else has got to be at fault, right? Somebody else has got to be at fault. But notice, why have you delivered us in the hand of the Midianites? Why? Well, it wouldn't be because you followed after their gods. That's what they were doing, right? They were now following after the gods of the Midianites, so he just let the Midianites take them. Okay. And the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent thee? And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house. I don't have any money. I don't have any whatever it is you need me to do. I don't have any of it. I'm out. Well, we get over here and we see that he wants to try it. He does. God tells him to tear down his father's altar, and he does that. But you notice in verse 36 of chapter 6, and Gideon said, if thou wilt save Israel by my hand, as thou hast said, behold, now he's going to test God. There we go. He's going to have to be convinced. Behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor, and if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon all the earth beside it, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by my hand, as thou said. And it was so. For he rose early on the morrow, and thrust the fleece together, and wrung the dew out of the fleece a bowl full of water. And Gideon said unto the Lord, let not thine anger be hot against me, and I pray, and I will speak this once. Let me prove, I pray thee, but this once with the fleece. Let it now be dry upon the fleece, and upon the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew upon the ground. So you're going to have to prove God. It's kind of like Moses, when God said, go, Moses, and Moses going, how many excuses? At least 3 excuses Moses made. Here is Gideon saying, he's kind of afraid. And so he's about to go where he's going to go. And so he says now, and the Lord, in verse 2 of chapter 7, and the Lord said to Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many. He called Israel, and they said, come out. There seemed to be a lot came out. So he says, there's too many with thee for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand has saved me. No, you got all this many people? Can't have that many people, because I don't want them saying, we won. I want them to say, God won. Yeah. Now therefore, go proclaim to the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. But how many people went home? Lots of people went home and said, well, if you're afraid of going to battle, go home. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people are too many, yet too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee, and of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people under the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, every one that lappeth water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, thou shalt set him by himself. Likewise, every one that bows down upon his knees to drink. And the number that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of them bowed upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said to Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you and deliver the Midianites into thy hand. And let all the people go, every man to his place. So send everybody away except 300. And so it is that the 300 do exactly what God said. It's interesting that because here again, he's going, I don't know. 300 against how many? So many they're like grasshoppers. We can't even count them. They got thousands of camels and there's thousands of men. So many we can't count them. But we notice that God tells him what to do. Divide the company into 3 groups, 100 in each group. And at a certain time, they are to all blow their trumpet, break their pitcher that has a light in it, and cry out the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And that's what they did. And it is interesting that when they did this, though there was only 300 of them around a cult of this great huge camp, the men in the camp became confused and began to kill each other, thinking everyone that's running by them in the dark is an enemy soldier. And so in the confusion, they actually killed themselves. And it was all Gideon and his 300 had to do was do a little cleanup work, because they actually did the killing themselves in their confusion, thinking that in the dark, because it's in the night, and they're thinking everybody's running around here are enemies, so they killed each other. And then we find that problem here comes with men of Ephraim when they come and they don't like it because somehow they didn't get to be part of this killing off of the Midianites and getting the goods that they had. And you know how that is. Was Ephraim there? Yeah. What happened? They went home. What they went? Yeah, they went home. When he said, everybody that's afraid, go home, what'd they do? Oh, they went home. But now the battle is over, and it's time to divvy up the goods. What do they want? I want my share. Yeah, that's exactly what you're seeing here. Yeah, I want my share. There we go. So, Gideon is going, and he comes to one town, Succoth, and asks for bread for his men, as it says they're about to faint, they're hungry, and they refuse. He goes on down to verse 8, he reads about Penuel. They likewise refuse. He later comes back and punishes them, and then he goes down and kills a lot of other people as they're trying to cross out of the land, as he had chased them there. And if you just read this, it's really an interesting read. But up here, it notes that after this is all settled, finally, they want to make Gideon king. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. We see the heart of Gideon now. He is now strong. He is brave. He's standing on the Lord's side. And he's not going to give in to the people. The people want to make him king, and he says, what? Not going to do it. Nope, not going to do it. But he does make a little mistake. He makes an ephod from the monies, the gold and the silver, and the materials that he got in this battle. He makes an ephod, which is a priest's garment, and he put it in the city of Ophrah. And it doesn't say when, but sometime later, after his death, later in time, they began to worship that ephod. And that's verse 27. Gideon made an ephod thereof and put it in the city, even Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. Now this Gideon is already dead by the time this occurs, but when it's talked about to Gideon and his house, you'll see how that becomes a snare later, because his house is about annihilated by the next king. Well, we'll stop right there and we'll look at Abimelech next. Abimelech is now we're going to see here Now, what did we start? The first two judges were great warriors, great men. The third one was a coward. The fourth one was a coward. You know, Barak wasn't going to go without her. Gideon started out being a coward, but became a brave man after he saw how God would help. And Abimelech is the son of a concubine. Now, what do we learn about in the law? Concubines can be Israel? No. And later, also down here, when we get to Jephthah, he's the son of a harlot, but they want him to leave. He's the son of a harlot, but can he be one of the great of Israel? No, he cannot. Because Deuteronomy 23:2 says, "And no bastard shall ever enter in." You know.
But God can use them as a tool.
Huh?
God can use them as a tool.
He's what he's done. He's used them as a tool, and it is a tool for the sake of Israel. But at the same time, I see this as a slap in the face of Israel. You keep going after these other gods. Now, you finally got so low. It's kind of like Balaam. You know, Balaam got so greedy that the only one that God could find to talk sense to him was a donkey. Isn't that pretty bad? Well, this is the same thing. What you guys have sinned so long and are so low that the only one that I can find that could possibly help you is the son of a prostitute. Pretty sad. That's a slap in the face of Israel, actually. If you look at that, not a slap at Jephthah, but a slap at Israel. All right. Well, our time is up. If there's anything we can do, let us know as we stand and sing this song.
Living below in this old sinful world, hardly a comfort can afford. Striving alone to face temptation sore. Where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord? Neighbors are kind, I love them every one. We get along in sweet accord. But when my soul needs manna from above, where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord? Life here is grand with friends I love so dear. Comfort I get from God's own word. Yet when I face the chilling hand of death, where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord?
Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, we're so thankful to you for this day, that we can gather here and worship you, experience the study of the word, learn. Please be with those who are ill and strengthen, be with those who have lost loved ones, comfort, and help us to do whatever we can to help those who are. Please be with our children and grandchildren. Okay. Very good.
Yep. Where can I go?
Very good.
Boy. Oh, I will. She's walking like this. You don't ever get outside. The top of my leg, I hear.
Thank you for joining us today. God bless you.